thought it came across as beginning, middle, and end. Because of the way he started with where he was and how he led into what he's actually doing now and taking it through there. So that was quite informative.
Yeah.
But on the whole, the timing was excellent. The slide transition did match the vocals at the time, with the odd exception. But I don't know whether you practiced that many times to get it right, or whether it was...
I've gone over it once or twice in my head, but that's the first time I've done it in anger.
The thing with that style, Steve, is that it's the PK style, and you really have to set the screen up in front of you so that you can see the slide transition if you can't look back. And the trick is to not panic if you feel you've still got something to say and then the slide changes. So the timing is still quite tricky, even though you can see the slide transition. And Jeremy's was even more tricky because some of his were 20 seconds and some of them were 10. But he's just showing off.
Some more 40.
Do you know, you could tell that what Jeremy was talking about was personal, and there was some, you know, there were images from your wedding. You know, that means an awful lot. But having said that, I've met Jeremy twice, maybe 3 times now, and I would say that at points there we didn't get real Jeremy. We got presentation Jeremy. There didn't seem to be enough soul in it. You know, the image of his wedding was there, and there was a reaction that you gave, which you sort of which broke the presentation persona, which I wanted more of. Rehearsed and presented, and in that sense, sometimes it loses a bit of its soul. It loses a bit of the sense that it's happening in the moment, and with you're feeling what you're saying, and the feeling in what you're saying is really what has so much impact on us as an audience.
I did enjoy it. I thought it was a great story, and I enjoyed the delivery. The criticism I've probably got of the technique is it like everyone said, it does feel quite dissociated. That you don't engage. But for me, that's one of the things that I found kind of a plus point. It was like when you're watching a film on ITV before Sky Plus came out. You have to focus and watch it and pay attention there and then. Whereas now we've got Sky Plus, it'll get stopped, it'll get paused, you'll go and make a brew, answer the door. And the whole system kind of leads you towards having to pay attention and follow it. So,
I thought it was a fascinating subject, something I knew nothing about, and I thought you had the opportunity actually for a stronger grabber to really capture my interest. I thought, yes, it was great, it was very interesting, that very soon I got into it, yes, it's about spiritualism, but I love the use of the living and dead at your wedding. The fact that there were 100 living and many more dead people at my wedding. I thought that could have been, if we pitched that at the beginning, we'd have really grabbed it. What on earth, where's this guy coming from? 3 quick things. Authenticity was exactly the thing I wanted to get from you. Just a little, probably less information in there, in those 20-second slides. I thought if we could have got 3 key points across around it, that you could have built maybe more detailed stories around, that would have been fantastic for me. And you did a couple of lines which you really delivered with definition and change of pace, which was about I was a rock. And I really got to grips with actually, you know, that it was nothing was penetrating you in that sense. And there was that sentence and that about the living and the dead, where you changed the rhythm and you changed the pace, and you didn't fight to stay up with the slides. And it was in those moments where you went, this is what it meant to me. That you could.
This is going somewhere. Had my full attention. The thing that really, and I'm criticising content a little bit here, which is perhaps a bit unfair because we're all meant to do technique, but I thought that all the people towards the end, you really lost me, because I'm not really interested in them. They're not well known enough for me to know them. They don't make any difference to me. But the bit about, you know, joining the National Association and then you, I wanted a you ending, and it was all these other dudes. You know, you lost me there. So I think that content, you need to look at that. I think it deflects from.
That's a very interesting point, because I think there's a difference between a lecture, which is an academic overview of a subject, and personally opening up to the audience about what this stuff means to you. And I think the audience much prefers the latter than the former. And you've made it more personal than it was the other day, because it really was lectury and academic overview.
Wasn't it?
But I think personally it still needs to go more to the personal.
And that was the point I was making. I just, having spoken to you and having seen you talking before, and you talk very passionately, and I just felt that this had a certain amount of, it was disconnected from that passion too much.
Okay.
And when we got opportunities to access that passion, it was much more interesting. It had me on the edge of my seat.
I just wanted to feel a bit more of what you must have felt to be in that situation.
I don't think you're very humble, Jeremy, about what you do.
No, I only have 40 seconds.
Wait till he gets started. No, I know what you mean. It's almost slightly apologetic.
Yeah.
You know, rather than being really proud of what you've done. There's a humility to it, which is great, but I think in some senses it undersells, you know, what you've done.
The added to the story, the imagery used. I think the only one that did come out to me was the eyes, that it was suddenly scientific and it lost the spiritualism, if that makes sense. Just because of the way your brain works and sees that form of image, and it, you know, you're thinking, all right, I'm getting into this now. It's very spiritual, and then it's like there's a scientific picture there rather than a spiritual.
We spend a lot of our time.
Yeah, I've seen Jeremy speak before. So, just thought there was a lack of enthusiasm at the beginning. I didn't like the dark bit because I couldn't see him, so we couldn't engage with him. It was just like a voice I know it wasn't pitch black. I thought you spent too long setting the scene in terms of why it was important. You know, a couple of slides would have banged that out, and 4 stories in 6 minutes 40 seconds is too many, and 5 if you include Jeremy's story. So that's 5 stories in that amount of time.
You can't do them justice. You have to skate through them a little bit.
I would have picked 2 at the most, and stuck to those. And I didn't think there was a finish.
No, exactly.
I didn't know when you'd finished. You said you'd finished, and then you said there was a book, and then you said the thing, and I thought, well, that's important.
It faded away.
Yeah, you just sort of faded. The finish should have been, I saved somebody's life. So could you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think your style, Jerry, your style is very conversational, which I think is to be applauded. It's a really good thing to do that. But the downside to that is perhaps a lack of structure and a lack of clear finish and a call to action, and now it's done and I'm off. You know, we like to know when it's ended.
It's like, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm well done.
Overdone.
So far over my head, it's through.